thank you for joining us today. So we have this program with Public Works, uh, and we have Stella and Tom and Kevin here with us today, who are going to tell us a little bit about what they do with Public Works and how they all do something very different, but their jobs come together to make LA County a place where we all want to live, right? At the end of this, there will be a survey sent out via email. Please do that survey. It'll help us out. It'll help Public Works out. And it's just overall better for everyone, the more people who do the survey. So I'm going to hand it over to these nice people in Public Works to tell you a little bit about what they do, introduce themselves, and hopefully get you excited about maybe working in Public Works yourself one day.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Stella Quiroz. I think I'm gonna just start us off today. So we did want to talk about STEAM first of all. So what is STEAM? So the S stands for science, the T stands for technology, the E stands for engineering, the A stands for arts, and M is for mathematics. So I think probably STEAM is a very common lingo now, but just in case we did want to run that over, and we are going to be touching about actually a little bit of everything in STEAM, but we're probably going to be focusing on the E in engineering since myself, Joe, and not Joe, sorry, Tom, and Kevin are working in the civil engineering field. So I'll just start a little bit about me. I am a senior civil engineering assistant here at LA County Public Works. I've been here about 3 years and I work in the stormwater planning division. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Just a little bit more background about me. So I am an LA County girl. I was born and raised here in Temple City, and I went to school in LA as well at UCLA. And that's where I studied civil engineering. And it's also where I discovered what I love the most about civil engineering, which is being able to help other people. That's something that's really important for me and like a big part of my faith. And so in college, I joined Engineers Without Borders. It's actually an organization that has both professional and student chapters. And so I joined the student chapter, and while I didn't actually travel anywhere with them, I helped out with a lot of groundwork in terms of designing things. And so we didn't do any grand projects, but we did like design a school, like a school building for like a village in a remote area, and also helped to build a latrine, which is just a fancy word for a toilet. So while it may not seem very like grand on a scale, but it was actually very meaningful to the people in the community. So that was something really touching for me, and also just gave a lot of purpose to what I do. And so another fun thing that I liked doing in college was I helped out with building an eco-dome in Mexico. And that's not actually, the picture on the screen is not actually the eco-dome that I built. It was a much more build. It was a simplified version, but if you guys look it up, there's actually some very fancy eco-domes out there, and it's part of like ecotourism. And so it was really fun to learn about the eco-dome just because it's very built with very basic materials, but it works so well. It'd be so hot outside, but as soon as you step inside the eco-dome, it was cool, and vice versa. If it was cold outside, you would step in and you would feel warm. And so I got to be able to be a part of helping to build that, and we built it for a family who was running a convalescent home, and they were kind of struggling financially to be able to keep their convalescent home going. And so this kind of eco-dome, once we were done, would help them bring in people to like rent it out or live there temporarily, and so they could get some more income. So that was something fun to do during college, and so that was always on my heart. And after college, I did work about 3 years in the private sector. And while during that time, though, I knew I wanted to go overseas, knew I wanted to be able to use engineering to volunteer. And so I did eventually get to do that. And I went to India. So that's me in front of the Taj Mahal. And in India, I did a lot of different I helped with a lot of different projects because I worked with a hospital organization that had 20 hospitals, and they're all in rural areas, kind of like small villages. And so one of the things that I got to do there, which was most meaningful to me, was this accessibility training. Because while I was there, I noticed that a lot of times in the hospital campus, there would be ramps that were really steep, or there were no handrails, or the bathrooms were really small. And so if you were a wheelchair user, or if you had someone who needed to help you use the restroom, which is very often times the case if you're in the hospital, it was so small and you could barely fit anyone in there. So I decided to be able to hold this accessibility training for the hospital administrators and for their facility managers, so that they could, kind of understand how to make their hospital campuses better for differently abled people. And so that was something that we did, and we even had a trainer who is herself a wheelchair user, and she had everyone do different exercises. The most fun was seeing everybody experience what it was like to be differently abled, and actually trying to go up like a ramp, and then or actually trying to navigate the hospital campus as if they were somebody who was visually impaired. So that was my time in India, and I really loved it. But I did come back to the US, and I did get a job at LA County Public Works, and was so grateful that it's also a place that is about serving the community, although the community in this case is LA County, which is huge. So as I said before, I work in stormwater planning, and just kind of to go, into that a little bit, what we do is we do plan projects that are usually stormwater related. And so the one that I'm working on is actually in Sun Valley, which, if you're not familiar with it, it's a community in the city of Los Angeles. And this area actually had still does have flooding issues. As you can see in that picture above, that's actually a picture taken in that area. And when it would rain, and if it was heavy rain, the streets would just get so flooded. And so we identified the problem was that this area lacked a comprehensive storm drain system. And what I mean when I say comprehensive storm drain system is it didn't really have catch basins, which is what you see in the picture, and which I'm sure most of you have seen if you've walked down a street. There's usually these grates on the ground, and that's where when it rains, or if there's water on the streets, it'll usually flow into these catch basins and go into the storm drain system, the underground storm drain system, into pipes that carries the water away so that it doesn't flood. So this area doesn't really have this comprehensive storm drain system. So we knew that that was part of the solution. But what we did was we found an area in Sun Valley, and it was initially called Strathern Pit, which is this big plot of land that you see here on Google Maps. It's 46 acres, so it's quite huge. And we said this is going to be a site for a project that we're planning. And we decided that we would have a multi-benefit project. And multi-benefit literally means that there's more than one benefit to this project. So obviously the first one is that we do want to reduce the flooding in the area, because we want to keep the community safe. We don't want them to be scared if it rains, if something will happen to their car, or if their businesses will get impacted. So we addressed that in our project. So this is actually a rendering of the project. It's not yet built, but we have this aerial image of what it would look like in the future. And so what you kind of see in the foreground is this 21-acre detention pond. And so essentially when it rains, we plan to bring all that stormwater in this watershed area into this detention pond. And then, so it's not going to be flooding the streets anymore. And so that's one part of it. And the second part is we do want to improve the water quality. So we're not just going to take the stormwater, but we're also going to clean it. And so we did that with the 10-acre wetlands. And so that's kind of that, I don't know if you can see my mouse, it's just right next to the detention pond. There's two of them right there. And so the water from the detention pond gets pumped into the wetlands. circulates through, and there's plants in there, and so it'll help to kind of filter out the pollutants, and we'll have cleaner water. And of course, we do want to, have spaces for the community to meet, and so that's why we wanted to make this a park. And so we have, as you can see in the bottom picture, we want to have basketball courts, tennis courts, and playground for the community. And the last part of it is the water conservation part. And you can't see it in the picture, but what we plan to do is that the water that's in the wetlands will get pumped into these underground stormwater infiltration galleries. And so that's going to help, because as you have lived in California, you know that it's very dry here and we are very prone to drought. So us pumping water back into the ground helps replenish the groundwater table, and so we will become more resilient against drought. And of course, we didn't want to leave the name of this place to be Strathern Pit, so we did rename it to become the Rory M. Shaw Wetlands Park Project. This is a project that I spend a lot of time on, and I'm very proud of, even though it's not yet built. So if you did want to learn more about it, we have a website, it's sunvalleywatershed.org, if you wanted to learn more about this project. And yeah, it's currently in a design phase, and we hope to start construction in the next year or so. But I'm just going to hand it off now to Tom, who will share more about what he does.
Thank you, Stella. So my name is Tom, and I am a senior civil engineering assistant at LA County Public Works. I'm in design division, which I'll talk about. And I've been at Public Works for about 1.5 years. I went to Cal Poly Pomona, and I grew up in Riverside, so I've lived in Southern California my entire life. Some things that got me into civil engineering, I was always interested in like systems. I sometimes would take things apart as a kid, put them back together. I think that's kind of a typical thing a lot of people say. Um, I wasn't like the best at math or science, but I was always like, super interested in it, and those are my favorite topics. I always was, excited to learn things about math or science in school. Um, Before I had this job, I actually worked in the private sector. It was a very, I would say, unfulfilling job. Not all civil engineering jobs are the same, unfortunately. But I did work for a company, and we mainly developed housing tracts. So um, definitely kind of the same type of work on a daily basis, which I think got kind of boring for me. So I decided, um, I felt like I would have a better impact on, the communities in Southern California, and well, specifically LA County, by working, at Public Works. So I applied, and I now really enjoy the projects I work on. They're very diverse. And so moving on, so I am in the design division. So Stella, if you go to the next slide, um, what is design? So as Stella mentioned, one of her project is in the design phase. And so Stella will, I guess, reach out to a designer and say, hey, we want to do this project. And so as designers in the design division, we'll look at a project, and we'll look for things like you'll see in this picture, like, well, what's in the area? Do we have any bridges? Do we have any large channels for stormwater? Do we have any power lines? If you kind of look in the picture more closely, you can see we have some train tracks up there. So all these things are really important, and they really kind of culminate what design is. And so I kind of break design down into two major sections. I would say there's there's the water. There's like our water section, and there's a road section. So if you think about water in general, we have storm drains, channels, and basins. And so if you look in the top left corner there, you'll see a very large basin. This is kind of how we store water. The top right corner is an underground storage system, which we use to store water and use it for later. So it doesn't really rain that much in Southern California, but when it does, it comes down. And so that water all has to go somewhere. And so at the county, we try to find ways to capture the water and retain it. so that it doesn't make its way to the ocean, or so that we can be more, we can use it to like water our plants and things like that. So this, in the top right corner, you'll see an underground storage system, which will take water, we'll treat it and save it for later, and we'll use it to irrigate and water plants. In the bottom right corner, you'll see a storm drain. So this is a really large storm drain. It's used to just move water from one place to another. And it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. You'll be driving down the road and you might not even think it exists. But it's there and it's large. And this is actually, what you'll see in that picture, this is actually a concrete box storm drain that I'm actually proposing for one of Kevin's projects who will be speaking later. Moving on to the next slide. In design, we also design roadways and bike paths. So on the left, you'll see a roadway being resurfaced. And so we can resurface roadways or we can reconstruct them. If you've been driving on a road and you notice it's like really bumpy or really old or really bad, odds are it probably needs to either be reconstructed or resurfaced. And so if we can resurface, that's generally the most efficient way to fix a roadway that may be getting old or maybe getting damaged. But if we have to, we'll reconstruct it, where we'll actually rip out the old asphalt that's there and put new asphalt. Next, we also design bike paths. If you know, bike paths are a more sustainable way to travel and get around. They're better for the environment. They also reduce the amount of traffic on the road. So at the county, we try to implement or build more bike paths with our design, or at least really consider them when we're designing a new project. One other very important aspect about design is also emergency services. So if you look at the top right of that picture there, you'll notice it looks like a road has been washed out. This happens more frequently than than you might think. With heavy rains or even fires, it can really mess up the structural integrity of a road, which can lead to collapse or mudslides, things like that. And obviously, this isn't safe to drive on, because if someone if someone doesn't see that, you wouldn't want to drive in there, and it also cuts people off from getting to the places they want to be. So that's just a little bit about design. I'll hand it off to Kevin, who will talk about the next phase, or at least another important aspect of public works, which is maintenance.
All right. Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. I'm an associate civil engineer for LA County Public Works. Like Tom said, I work for our stormwater maintenance division. I've been there for the county about 7.5 years. For stormwater maintenance, it's been a little shorter, but I've worked in a variety of different field roles as well. I went to school at UC Irvine, and I currently live in Inglewood. All right. And a little bit more about me. I got into civil engineering, very similar to my fellow panelists, just, interested in building things and, playing with water and things like that. And then something that is, a steam-related hobby, at least I consider it, is roller coasters. Another reason I got into civil engineering as well, specifically structures. And I always been fascinated with them, and I really enjoy traveling to go ride them and experience all the amazing engineering that's out there. And in college, I joined the American Society of Civil Engineers. It's a great organization. There's a lot of other engineering organizations, depending on which engineering field you're interested in, or if you want to do something that's more interdisciplinary for all the different engineers. There's a lot of options out there in college. I had an opportunity to build a doghouse similar to the one on the bottom in my picture there, and we put a green roof on there. It was very sustainable, and we were able to give that to a veteran from the Iraq War, so that was really, really fulfilling. And the reason I got interested in LA County Public Works was just because of is a great opportunity to have a diverse workplace. I've got to see a lot so far, and I'm really enjoying it and hope to learn a lot more. All right, and now let's move on to my projects. So, as I said, I worked in a variety of different spots in the past. I've worked on stormwater treatment projects. So if you look on the top left of your screen, we would capture the water from the storm drains and do the planning to figure out which areas needed to be treated, whether it be through kind of plants like biofiltration, or if we were doing it in another way, kind of like what Tom had showed with those infiltration galleries and things like that. But it's a really exciting spot there. On the bottom left, I also worked on bringing water to our customers out in the Malibu area, working on design as well as working on public counter work out in the field. So it was, you have a lot of opportunities to be able to help people personally, getting them water service, helping them upgrade the system so that they can, build on their property, things of that assortment, and just overall improving the system with better tank design and larger pipe design. And finally, before I got into my stormwater maintenance position, I worked out in our field office, upgrading our street lighting, our tunnel lighting. So as you can see on the right picture, we have a photo of Mount Baldy Road as you're going towards one of the tunnels that you get through, and it's really interesting. Yeah, and I'll move on to what I'm doing currently in stormwater maintenance. So with all the maintenance that we're working on, I get to work with all of our field staff and get an idea of what's going on, what's the issues going on, and then I come up with a proposal for design to do the work. I ask them to give us a concept on what needs to be designed. And I also make sure that the projects get done in a timely manner because we have issues that are going to affect our maintenance. So for example, our golf club debris basin, we have a lot of this algae, as you can see in the pictures. A lot of different debris gets stuck in there because you have all these storm drains coming into it, and it's right in the hillside. And so we're working on getting this graded a little bit better on the bottom of our debris basin and make sure that it's working a lot more efficiently than it currently is. Then on to my next project. We have a storm drain that goes out to the ocean, so an outfall basically. And this storm drain is all reinforced concrete boxes. So there's a portion of it that's deteriorating. As you can see, we have steel plates chained onto it just to keep everything contained. And so we're working on getting this project fixed up, and then we can move on to my next project. We have some other variety. We're working directly in the channels, like the Los Angeles rivers. A lot of it is channelized. We have one in Santa Clarita called Haskell Canyon Channel. We had this big emergency where the wall caved in. We had to reinforce the wall with some steel plates, and right now we're working on getting everything replaced with a new wall that's supported a lot more properly. And then lastly, or not second to last, or actually lastly, we have our West Neapolitan pump station. I work on a variety of pump station projects where we're trying to make sure that they're working properly. Ultimately, these pump stations are pumping the water in the lowest points of the communities and pumping it out to the channels to ensure that the communities are not flooded. So this is very important for us, and we've have a lot of different things and issues that we have to deal with, working with the different environmental agencies as well as working with the community to ensure that we can do this in a calm as you can get with construction manner. But yeah, that's essentially what I do, and we look forward to your questions.
All right, thank you all for sharing. So yeah, we are going to open it up to questions. If you have any questions for any of our panelists, please go ahead and put them in the chat, and you can address them to all panelists or just the host. But all panelists is your best bet so that everyone will be able to see it, just in case somebody misses it. While we're waiting for those questions to come in, I'm going to ask y'all a question. What did you do at work this week? What did your typical day look like this week? Let's start with Stella.
Okay. As I said before, a lot of my time is spent on the Rory Shaw project, it's a big project and lots of coordination. So I was working on that this week. We're putting together a transportation management plan. So when the project is, going to go into construction, we want to make sure that the community, the nearby community is, taken care of while the project is going on. So if there's any road closures or anything. So this plan is basically just going to outline, okay, what is the best way of making sure that we, keep traffic going during our construction, and we making sure that we talk with all the right agencies, like if we need to talk to Caltrans or MTA, the Metro. And so we're working on finalizing that plan. So that was something I did this week, and I guess we can just keep going in order, and I'll pass it off to Tom.
Sure. So this week was a little out of the ordinary for me, I would say. I probably say so. This week I went to the field twice, which was pretty awesome. I went out onto a site where they're doing construction work, or we're looking into doing construction work, things like that. On average, I'd probably say I typically go into the field maybe once or twice a month. I don't know, it depends. But yeah, so this week, let's say like Tuesday, I went out to the field to a project we'll just call it East LA, but it's an injection or it's a stormwater project where we take water, capture it, and infiltrate it into the ground. So we have all these giant wells that basically, when it rains, the water goes in the catch basin, and then it makes its way to the wells, and then the wells put the water back into the ground, like deep into the ground. And so we went on this site walk just to see, if everything is being built properly, because sometimes contractors or construction folks, they'll maybe miss something. Like, for example, we opened up a large manhole lid, and we found that the ladder, or like the steps to go down into the manhole, were missing. And so, well, we need our crew to go down there, stormwater maintenance, Kevin's team, they need to be able to go down there and, check things out or make sure everything's working properly. So we made a note of it, passed it on to the construction team, and then they're gonna make sure those ladders get installed. So that was one thing. Another thing, I went out to another field walk where we're looking at this like concrete intersection. So sometimes, like, we're at an intersection, it might be asphalt, it might be concrete. You'll notice in areas where there's a lot of heavy trucks, the intersection will be concrete, because when those trucks are stopped, they can really mess up asphalt. They can really mess up the road and make it not last as long. So myself and a few team members were going out to inspect that concrete, because we want to see if there's anything we need to repair on our project, because we're planning to do some other work in the area. But other than that, this week it was some typical design work. My boss has a large project where they're reconstructing the street, and so we're looking into making sure things like all the curb ramps are ADA compliant. We're making sure water is draining properly through gutters, things like that. So I would say that's about what my week was like, and I'll hand it off to Kevin.
All righty. So for my week, it's been a variety of different things going on. As a project manager, it's always a lot of different scheduling updates that we do, answering questions from our designers, things to that assortment. Some of the major things that I worked on is mostly we have some access roads that go to our flood facilities, for stormwater facilities, and we are getting these all repaved. So I was working on finalizing things with the contractor, making sure that the quantities are all matching what we had calculated, and getting the approval from our field engineers as well as our headquarters staff. And then additionally, I had been working on some environmental clearances for a few of our projects, and just getting my team ready for doing the same thing. That's it for me.
Well, thank you all for sharing. We have another question. Did you guys have any internships relating to your major?
Okay, should I go first?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yes, I did have an internship kind of near the end of college. I interned at LAUSD, Los Angeles Unified School District. No, I was not teaching, but they actually at LAUSD, because they have, I forget how many, I want to say hundreds of schools, they actually have their own architectural and engineering division. And so that was where I was working. And I because I was working, I was a civil engineering student. I basically shadowed their civil engineers and went with them on site visits and reviewed plans. And it was a great experience. It's just I do have to explain that to people when I tell them that I interned at LAUSD. They always think I was a teacher. Tom?
So for college, I'd say most of my college career, I had like an on-campus job. I wouldn't really consider it an internship, but my last year of college, I did get an internship kind of towards the end of the year. And I think thinking back, I thought I should have gotten an internship earlier. But I did get an internship my last year of college, and then that turned into my first full-time job in the private sector that I talked about. But yeah, at the end of the college, I did have an internship. Kevin?
Very cool. Yeah, similar to Tom, I got an internship after my bachelor's degree, right before my master's degree, working for Orange County Public Works. Um, so that was really interesting. Got me, to understand a little bit more about the public sector, and also get a variety of drainage plans, as well as learning about bridges that they're working on. So definitely recommend it, and definitely should have got an internship sooner. So I recommend that once you guys get into college.
So thank you for that advice. There's a question for Stella. As a woman engineer in a field that's stereotypically dominated by men, what is your experience? Have you had any negative experiences, and how did you handle it?
I would say overall my experience has been good. In college, I don't think I felt any different from, I mean, yes, the classes were mostly male, but I did feel, very much, didn't feel any different in that sense. I think once I got out working, there were some challenges here and there. I would say when I was in India, there it was a little bit different, challenging there sometimes, because I think it was generally a very, I would say they expected kind of like a male to talk to the contractor and to be figuring out like these decisions and everything. But I do think that when you act with respect towards one another, and you kind of don't take too personally anything that they may say against you about, because not just about your gender, but sometimes they can look down on but may kind of perceive things differently because you may look younger or something like that. So they might want to see if they want to talk to a supervisor or something like that when you're saying, well, I'm actually the person managing this. But I think that overall, especially at Public Works, I have not had any bad experience with that. I do think that we've come a long way as well, and so yeah, I would say that it's best to just continue to respect others and to always just do your best, because if you're doing your best, then even if people challenge you, you can stand your ground on it, on what you've been doing. Yeah.
Nice to hear that you've had positive experiences. So there's a question for Tom. You said that for design division, they have to see what's in an area like power lines and such. Has there ever been a time where there were too many things in your area and you had to redesign the whole project?
That's an interesting question. I don't think we've had to like redesign a whole project. My short 1.5 years at Public Works, I don't think we've ever had to like start back at square one. But I'm only speaking from a short time I've been here. But I do know of a project that I mentioned earlier, East LA. I do know that there was, I think, a power line or a data line that was overlooked, and the problem was the construction folks had to bring in a huge crane, and so on one side of the project, everything was fine. The crane worked over there. They were able to do other work. But they had to get the crane to the other side of the project, which is on the other side of the power line. And so they couldn't just, knock down the power pole. And in order to go around it, they would have had to like bring the crane through the construction or through, a residential area where people are there with, walking their dogs or doing whatever, things like that. And so they couldn't really do that. Also, it wouldn't really fit on the streets. So I do know there's small challenges that do arise, and that's why I think in design we try to do as much as what we call due diligence, as much preliminary research as possible to find out where are all those power lines, can we dig here? Are we gonna, if we dig here, are we gonna knock out everyone's internet in the neighborhood? That wouldn't be good. But I don't think we've had to, completely start from scratch because there's just, too many things we missed or too many things in the area. If there's a lot of utilities in the area, we typically find a way to make it work.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. That is, it's interesting to hear that the things you have to think about, like moving a crane, is something that I think that most normal people would not have thought about being a problem. What do you think are the most important non-technical skills an engineer should have? We'll start with Stella again.
Non-technical. I guess sometimes I want to say that a lot of times engineers love math and science, but maybe we don't like writing so much. So I do think it's important though to just not hate writing. I really didn't like writing when I was in school, but it's something you just can't escape. And even now, like while I'm not writing reports all the time or anything, I do review reports, which I did mention that, we're having this transportation management plan. So you do kind of have to get used to like reading these things because it's very important information sometimes. As, Tom was saying, you have to do your due diligence and they're not going to just read it to you out loud. You're going to have to read things and like look for things. So yeah, I would say that like a non-technical skill would just be, make sure that you refine your writing, grammar and everything that's important, spelling. Don't push send too soon, just do a check, all that stuff that's like kind of you would think, but sometimes people kind of overlook that. And research is important, so just making sure that you have the patience to do that, because that can be really important for your job, so that like you don't have to go back and try to change things. It can save you money if you found it earlier on. Yeah, Tom?
Yeah, non-technical, I think I would say communication. I day to day, I'm communicating with my coworkers and being able to effectively, talk to them about, what I'm doing or if I'm having issues with X, Y, and Z, or if I have an idea for how to solve something. I think that's important. Um, Not so much for my division, but other divisions also have to communicate with the public. And so I think it's really important for you to be effective at communicating because when you interact with the public, you want to make sure that the public can trust what you're saying and understands what you're saying. Sometimes as engineers, we have all this technical jargon, and if someone walks up to you on the street and is like, "Hey, what are you doing?" and is trying to talk to you, and you hit them with all this jargon, and they don't know what you're talking about, um, it might, decrease the amount of trust they have in what you're doing because they don't know what you're doing, and they're just like, "Well, is this all necessary?" or things like that. So I'd say, effective communication both amongst your peers and the public is really important. What about you, Kevin?
Yeah, similar to you guys. I think teamwork's a big thing. You want to make sure you're a good team player, especially like during this pandemic, working from home. You don't get to see your coworkers as much. It kind of goes hand in hand with communication and emailing and things like that. Making sure that everything's clear, and just makes things a lot easier. Especially if you can, call somebody to make it a lot easier. That always helps. and just anything that makes your whole team's life easier, and the ability to be able to deal with some conflicts, and work on yourself, as well as give criticism to your own teammates as well. I think that's important.
Awesome. That all sounds very, very good. We probably have time for two more questions. Do you have to pass any tests to be an engineer? How good at math does an engineer need to be? I'm gonna let Kevin field this one since he hasn't been talking as much.
Alrighty, so I have my professional engineering license, so I've gone through all these tests. So you definitely do need to take some tests to become an engineer. Out of college, or even during like your junior year of college, you become eligible to take the Fundamentals of Engineering exam. It's a fairly simple exam that's based off of the all of the kind of lower engineering courses that you take, and it's changed a lot since I've taken it, but I'm sure it's fairly similar. I believe I don't know, I think 4 hours for the FE. I don't know. It's been a while, but something like that. And then after you pass that, you have to work as a professional for, depending on, if you get your master's degree, it's 1 year. Otherwise, it's 2 years after you graduate with your bachelor's degree. And from there, you're eligible to take the state exams. So we have a seismic and a surveying exam. And those two exams are only 2.5 hours, but it practices the things that are important in California, and that's going to vary from state to state. And the one that I'm leaving off is the 8-hour exam, the national exam. That one, when I took it, we had to have those 2 years of experience, but now you can take that as soon as you finish your bachelor's degree, is my understanding. So it makes it a little bit easier, and I don't think you have to be good at math to be an engineer. I think it's just a matter of getting through those classes. Most of the time, engineering is just going to be multiplying, adding, subtracting, dividing, at least in my opinion. I don't know what you guys think. Tom?
Yep, I agree. I don't do anything too crazy with math. What about you, Stella? Do you have to use a lot of math?
Um, no, not really, no. I mean, you do need to know it, but yeah, I'm not really using it on a daily basis. Martin, are you choosing our next question?
Yeah. So we have, uh, let's do, what is the best part of your job?
Hmm. Did you want to go first, Tom? Like, ready? I should go first. Okay. Okay. I would say the best part of my job, as I've said before, I think is the aspect of helping other people. And at Public Works, we want to serve our communities, whether it's by planning projects to help address problems in the area, or designing and constructing or operating and maintaining critical infrastructure. It's all very important. The roads, the storm drains, everything. We don't really realize how important it is until something happens to them, and then and it's not working, and then you really realize it when there's flooding, or if there's a big crack in the road. And yeah, I would say that the best part for me is knowing that what I'm doing now, although it may take time, and a lot of these construction projects do take a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of planning, is that in the end, that it's going to be a space or something that can benefit the community. Like for our project, I love it so much just because there's just so many aspects to it, of how it helps with the flooding, of how it's going to, later on help with water conservation, and also just in a tangible way, it's for the community to come and, you know, they can walk through the trails and see, oh, like birds in the wetlands or something like that. And also just be able to enjoy the park. And so, yeah, that's for me the most important and fun part of my job.
Yeah, for me, I definitely I think it's just yeah, being able to have an impact and also being able to see something go from, you know, nothing to just a project, you know, our when we're designing these projects, it's all just it's on a computer with it's just a lot of lines, you know. I don't know if you've seen plans before, but it's just a bunch of like lines on paper, and being able to see, you know, that being interpreted into a project, I think is really fulfilling. And also I think for me it's really exciting that the county has a lot of like stormwater quality projects where we're trying to actively, you know, our runoff and our rainwater, we're trying to make it cleaner. We're trying to store more of it, capture more of it, and use it for later, and be more efficient in that sense. Um, and you know, for the community, that's great. For, you know, the folks at the beaches, that's great because the water eventually makes its way to the beach. And you know, when surfers and kids swim in the water, you don't want them swimming in nasty water. So to me, that's also really really exciting. What about you, Kevin?
Similar to you guys, I definitely enjoy seeing the impact that we provide by, you know, improving a lot of these facilities that prevent storm and flooding. Uh, it's really satisfying, and it's really cool to see the different ways we convey water all across LA County. It's such an expansive area. I've gotten to drive all the way, you know, from Santa Clarita or even Lancaster sometimes, all the way to the most eastern portions, like close to like Diamond Bar almost. It's such a large stretch. You know, like you guys were saying, we do things on the ocean, we do some things inland, sometimes in the hillside, and just seeing that variety and talking to the different people that are interested in our projects and in the community is really satisfying.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. Do you have in the last few minutes few like a good tip or a word of wisdom for people interested in getting into engineering?
Yeah, I could go first. I think I see that's Joel's question. So tips for high school students. I would just say that one thing I didn't know when I started college was just how vast civil engineering could be. Like we did touch upon it, like there's the water aspect, there's the geotechnical kind of soil, you can go into roads, but there's even within that, like you can just go, like you can be very like within roads, you can be the, you know, an expert in bike planning or like, you know, bike lane planning or something like that. So I want to say that in college, it can't touch upon all of that because they really just focus on like the main areas. And so, you know, depending on colleges too, they might be able to focus a little bit more on some. So I would say like, you know, don't just think that what you're seeing in your classes is what you have to do, because I kind of thought that at the beginning. I took a Civil 101 class, and I think it focused mostly on structural, which I know Kevin loves, but I was just terrible at. And I remember like almost failing that class and thinking, I guess I'm not cut out to be a civil engineer. Like I just said, I guess this isn't for me. This is 101, the first, you know, upper division civil engineering class, and I'm not getting it. And so I think that I later on realized, okay, there's so much other parts of it. And so I'm glad I didn't just give up. And so I think that kind of applies to all majors too, not just civil engineering, is that like, you know, really just, you know, take the time to maybe like figure out that or like research into what other parts you can be doing. Cause sometimes there's just really specialized things that maybe interest you or like, are you're most, you know, passionate about. And so, I was just watching recently that, you know, there was a civil engineer who was also a paleontologist. And so, you know, that was able to combine the two of them, and like they wanted to figure out if this huge dinosaur could stand on its hind legs. And so he built some model out of it because he's a civil engineer, and like that's what he did. He built a very like a model of it. And so I just think that, you know, they would never tell you this probably in the Civil 101 classes, that you can combine this with, you know, paleontology, but you can. So just think about like that, and see, and don't try to like force yourself to fit into that mold, but just see how civil engineering could be something that fits into you and what you love.
Yeah, tips. I definitely agree with what Stella said, and if I had any tips too, like Stella went to UCLA, I went to Cal Poly Pomona. My partner also went to UCLA. I think also important thing to consider is like your college experience. If you know, are you a more hands-on person, or are you more like theory type of person? Because different schools will give you different type of experience, and so I definitely recommend you know, thinking about that. But to also add to what Stella was saying, you know, my partner is a civil engineer, and she does stuff with like satellite data and water quality. She takes satellite imagery and tries to figure out, you know, the kind of biological makeup of what's in the water. I had never even like considered that when you know, I didn't even know that was like an aspect of civil engineering. You know, it's like biology. It's you know, biology type of stuff, but with satellite data, it's crazy. And so I think like, you know, online or when you're researching civil engineering, you'll probably see a lot of what civil engineering is dealing with water and infrastructure, roadways, bridges, things like that. But you know, it doesn't have to be. It can be much more broad. I think at colleges there's a lot of niche, you know, specialty type areas that, you know, it might take a little research to find, but might give you a good sense of just, you know, the different kind of out of the ordinary type of civil engineering, you know, aspects that are out there. But what about you, Kevin?
I think you know, you guys both definitely have some great tips, and I think, I mean, I might be a little biased, but I'm still part of the American Society of Civil Engineers, and they have student chapters for most, I would imagine most schools that have a civil engineering program. And it's a great way just to get involved, get to know people. You can form study groups from there. You'll also work on a variety of different projects, whether it be a concrete canoe competition where you actually row a canoe and compete against other schools, or you're, you know, building something else like I did, like the doghouse. You know, that's the best thing to do, just getting involved in that regard, and get involved as well in other organizations. It's kind of like Tom said, you know, you're you're going to college for civil engineering, but it's also good to have those other aspects and know different people that could also help you in your future.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope that you feel inspired to maybe become an engineer or learn more about public works and all the cool stuff that they do. Don't forget to take that survey and that email. We really appreciate it. And that should go out here shortly. Yeah, thank you for joining us, and check out our other upcoming online programs, or virtual programs rather, at lacountylibrary.org. Bye, y'all.
Bye. Thank you.